First, I'm a third-year PhD student at the Institute of Education and Technology here at the Open University, UK. And basically what I'm researching is accessibility in massive open online courses. So in order to contextualize my research, basically, since I'm already writing up, I have already conducted 3 studies to cover different perspectives and trying to understand different areas. And one of the things I want to understand is how do MOOC providers cater for disabled learners, as well what are the expectations of disabled learners when taking part in MOOCs, and how can MOOCs be made accessible for disabled learners. Therefore, I conducted these 3 studies, one of them with 26 interviews with MOOC providers and those with a range of expertise in the MOOC community, which is a qualitative study, a mixed method, which includes 15 interviews with disabled learners, and as well pre and post MOOC survey data from 14 Open University MOOCs at FutureLearn. And finally, an accessibility audit, which includes 4 different areas of research and accessibility in heuristic evaluation, user experience, quality of the design, which is the part we are going to discuss today, and universal design for learning, and being tested through 4 different platforms, which are FutureLearn, edX, Coursera, and Canvas. So to contextualize this audit, basically the idea was to try to cover different areas which have relation with accessibility could give indicators to answer my research questions. So one side we have the heuristic evaluation, which is kind of the classical one, includes accessibility validation and as well user experience. The MOOC quality, which have 3 main areas: MOOC criteria, quality of the design, and technical platform and support for learners, and universal design for learning. So why? What includes quality? What quality has to do with accessibility? And it's important to understand this relationship between accessibility and quality to be considered part of the audit. So it's important to consider the base of quality in MOOCs is going to help better accessibility to all learners, deserving of disabilities. Considering that MOOCs, and we have to assume MOOCs cannot remove all barriers to learning, but can contribute to ensuring quality education to all. Better quality in MOOCs will help to have a better accessibility for everyone. As well, considering the lack of MOOCs to offer formal pathways to recognize academic qualifications and the access to higher education is something to point out, that to work together to make them a possibility to those in a more disfavorable situation to access to MOOCs, and as well considering the need to provide MOOCs with better quality to address new and different target groups. So that includes a more social perspective of accessibility in terms of multiculturality and multilingual. We're trying to find a framework that could be useful to evaluate quality and relation with accessibility. Obviously, OpenupEd was the first thing to look at since being part of the Open University, having been part of the net, and having a look into different frameworks that have been used in European projects. I consider templates as a template, the ones used for SCORE 2020 and BizMOOC to start working with. And there are 2 aspects to consider when using OpenupEd as a benchmark, in terms of that every MOOC platform has their own criteria, their own priorities, and their processes for quality for the MOOCs they upload. As well, the checklist is not always not necessarily designed for the use of experts. It has a self-assessment orientation and is as well a peer review process. So the institution who used is expected to scan itself the MOOCs production to provide first orientation on the strengths of the learning performance. So it had to be updated because the criteria was to be used for MOOCs that are already live and being already used by learners. So the language had to be changed and oriented to evaluate in that sense. And as well, the criteria have to be selected considering this switch of approach. So for that reason, in every of the single 4 checklists developed for the audit, including quality, had a similar criteria. They had what to test for, so information to help the evaluator to know what the criterion to evaluate. The testing method, so information to help the evaluator to proceed to test. And the idea of this testing method is the explanation that provides and reinforce what a fully achieved item would be. So that reason includes golden items, so the examiner can actually check what to evaluate and how to do it. All the checklists share the same rating method, so not achieved, the future is missing, partially achieved, the future is available but not interweighted, largely achieved is available and partially interweighted, or fully achieved is fully interweighted. If the criterion is not relevant, then there is a line for comments, which is adds this qualitative approach, more enriches the evaluation, adding not applicable should be fine. So the idea of this is to include the richness of 4 different ways to rate not only or not achieved, which is based, as you have noticed, in the OpenupEd quality level. And while the idea of to use what to test for testing method is based on approaches used in the Inclusive Design Research Center from OpenupEd University in Toronto. So in order
Paco, are you still there? I think that we lost Paco in his presentation. Marcus is complaining on bad connection. Paco might log in again. I'm just looking for his name. Yeah, he's back again. So welcome back.
Hello, sorry. Internet problems. Lovely, everyone. As I was saying, and I left one example in the slide. For example, the overall goal is explained the way what we are going to test for. The overall objective of the course is described in a few sentences, and the way to test it using a fully achieved golden item. So in order to select the criteria that was going to be included in the audit and in the quality part of the audit, several meetings with an expert from were organized to select the criteria to be removed, and those ones that needed some adaptation for the audit. That means that those that are related to accessibility or visibility or support staff, since it's not the focus of the staff of the evaluation afterwards, and accessibility is covered by other parts of the audit while talking about more clinical accessibility, those were removed, while other ones needed either to remain as they are, or partially remove some of the criteria that are part of them, or as well some rename and some further explanation. For example, one example could be the one of the course where talking about the ECTS credit transfer. Instead of using that transfer and changing into hours, so it can be understood everywhere. And therefore, finally, the group of criteria comprises 3 areas: the MOOC criteria, quality of design, and technical platform and support for learners, with a total of 50 criteria. And all those criteria have been renamed one by one. So, for example, we have 5 related to open. So there is open enrollment, open access, open location, open prior knowledge, or open free, which allows to go into depth to understand every single criteria. And indeed, that's the next step to consider is to the start. I already have run the accessibility audit for my thesis through 4 different MOOC platforms. such as FutureLearn, Coursera, edX, and Canvas. I'm right now analyzing those findings and writing up this chapter for the thesis. The idea is that as well to check actually what's the overlap between the different 4 parts of the audit. So just to recap, the accessibility, classic evaluation, user experience, quality, and universal design for learning, all those criteria to see where there is overlap, which one are actually indicating and showing interesting results to keep on optimizing the audit in the future. Some references, and we can go through the questions, I think, more or less.
Thank you, Paco. So, participants, we are in a webinar mode where you can only ask questions by chat. So please type your questions and I will rephrase it and read it to Paco and have a discussion on this. Paco, thank you for your presentation. I think it is very nice that you made also a cross-platform audit based on accessibility criteria as you discussed. Could you elaborate a little bit more on the phase you are in now? So you already performed the audit, or are you still conducting the research itself?
Well, it's already been conducted, and right now I'm analyzing the data. So I have all the results, and I'm writing them down for the thesis. So I'm in the position I'm trying to understand how. I mean, the idea of this audit and the way it's been designed is to allow overlap. So and that's very nice, because some things on the quality might be as well considered in universal design for learning, while some common technical errors can be coming from the classic heuristic evaluation. So the idea is to try to see what's the best approach we can find to evaluate accessibility in MOOCs. And definitely quality is important. And yeah, so I'm currently in the state of writing down those results and hopefully being able to show to all of you soon.
And will you perform an open review, or is it just standardized so that you try to produce it as an article in a journal, or do you want to have a large audience commenting on your draft paper, on your draft chapter?
Well, right now is myself, because it's part of the thesis. In the future, I mean, what the idea, and it's something I haven't shown in the presentation, is that every single part of the audit as well counted with 2 different writers. So 2 people indeed reevaluated what they did to check we are getting similar results in terms of validation of it. So definitely in the future, it would be great once I have prepared this and I probably written it for a thesis and maybe for a paper. Would be a great idea to come back to those experts and discuss, look, these are the results, what are we going to do, what can we do next that could be helpful for the new community.
Yeah. I hope that all the participants did have a good overview of his presentation. Alistair has a question. Can you read it, Paco, or should I read it for you? So, have you interviewed any special need participants about their experience of the courses? So, more than a student perspective from.
Yeah, luckily I had the pleasure to interview 15 learners who have been participating in FutureLearn, and it was a very rich experience to get to know their barriers to learning they found while participating, and actually their expectations on how they would like to get MOOCs developed for their own needs. So yeah. Okay. Yeah. Do I have time to answer John's and Karen's?
Yes. 1 minute. Yeah.
Yeah. So how much difference is there between different individual MOOCs compared to different platforms? That's a great question. I'm already understanding that some, for example, the technical aspect that usually accessibility heuristic evaluation can provide, or even the user experience, are more platform related. While when we go through more universal design for learning, or the learning design, we realize that obviously even MOOCs inside the same platform have different approaches that might increase or decrease accessibility. So but there are common patterns that could be implied by the providers, by the platforms to keep a minimum of information always available to the learner and the designers.
Okay. Thank you, Paco. It's very good. I think that we can go to the next presentation by John and Karen. Fred is asking if the presentations will be available separately. Yes, they will be on our Empower website. The recording will be available as well as the slides itself. John and Karen are from the UK, and also Paco already mentioned OpenupEd quality label, and they will elaborate on this perspective, both of them. So, John and Karen, the floor is yours. You can activate your mic, yes. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello everyone, I'm John Rosewell.
Karen Keir, hi.
So I'm going to start off briefly just by talking through a couple of general slides about why we should bother with doing MOOC quality, because MOOCs aren't part of normal university teaching, so should they have the same sort of attention to quality as conventional degrees is a question. And I think the answer probably is yes, because there are lots of stakeholders involved with it, all of whom have some interest in ensuring that there is good quality in a MOOC. One particular point I think I'd like to make, although it's a little bit an old experience, but I was very taken by the fact that for one MOOC that I studied, the students themselves were really very poor judges of the quality. So you had two students saying very different things about the same MOOC at the same time, and then a large number of students either agreeing or disagreeing with those two positions. So there wasn't even a consensus among the people who had actually studied the MOOC whether it was good or bad. So something else is needed. Attached to that, there is a concern about whether MOOCs should be treated differently from e-learning generally, and particularly higher education generally. MOOCs are different, they're free, they're open entry, they're typically very short, and so maybe all the normal QA procedures that universities have developed over the years are completely inappropriate. That's one position. Another position would be to say, well, the MOOC is a course, so shouldn't it just be judged like any other higher education course? So that's by way of general background. Specifically, the OpenupEd quality label provides, or could provide, a way of thinking about this which generalizes across different institutions, across different platforms. It's something that's available for anyone to use. There is a label process. I'll explain a little bit about that in detail. It's quite a lot of investment to get it correct. But there's also material that's available for self-assessments, and there's a hope that those quality aspects can be included in internal processes. So there is the quality label, but there's also flexible ways in which the OpenupEd quality aspects can be used. So a little bit more detail about how OpenupEd works. One thing is that all the OpenupEd MOOCs are expected to display these particular features. They're very general, they're sort of principles and can be expressed in different ways. But they're seen to be as really central to any notion of quality for the MOOCs. And I think partly you can see that these came out as a little bit of a reaction to the early XMOOCs, which were very limited in their pedagogy. OpenupEd itself the quality part of that is based around benchmarks, which have been derived from the e-excellence benchmarks, which have been well tested over the years. They can be divided into, there's a number that are appropriate to the institution, so appropriate to the large supporting structures that are used before the particular individual MOOC is created. And there are a number, 11, which need to be checked for each individual MOOC. So those are a little bit more focused. And the benchmark is supposed to be really a statement of best practice. It allows the university to say, are we doing this well or not so well? What can we do differently to make things better? And so it isn't about enhancement, it's about improvement. It's not a checklist where you go through and make a score at the end and say pass or fail. It's a reflective tool to help you improve quality. A couple of examples of benchmarks here are some that are at the institutional level. I'm not going to go through them in detail, but they are very general. So they are very general top-level statements, and they allow an institution to do things at the detail level. And here's the same sort of thing for the course level. And it's worth mentioning maybe that some things appear at both levels. So, for example, I think we're going to pick out one about licensing, which is number 27 on here. That's about the individual course having the correct licensing. But there's a policy at the institution level that says you should do that, and there should be a mechanism for doing it as well. There's a quick scan document that allows a quick check. So these are all the benchmarks that are on the course level, and you can see they fit onto a single piece of paper, so it's not that complicated. There's the not achieved, partially achieved that Paco mentioned, the same sort of idea of giving you a brief rating of how those benchmarks are achieved. And there's this way of mapping benchmarks to the features, because evidence for one of those particular benchmarks is likely also to be evidence that you met the features of an OpenupEd MOOC. So, over to Karen.
Hi, thanks, John. So I'm just going to carry on the talk with a little bit of a look at a case study. So this is looking at a MOOC that might be developed by our university, the Open University in the UK, and that lives on FutureLearn, once it's been made. So we're going to have a look here at how the OpenupEd features and the benchmarks could be applied to such a MOOC, and how you'd go about doing that assessment process. We started this with an extract from a paper that three of us wrote a little while ago, a book chapter, which you can find there, and the blue link is an open access version of it if you wish to go and have a look later on. So go forward. Oops. Yeah. Right. So there's no need to read all this text that's in the background there, but this is just highlighting how we can use the benchmarks, which are shown in the red colour, and the features, that's those characteristics that John showed earlier, which are shown in the blue colour. And we're going to zoom in on a little extract from this case study and show you how those two things can be applied to look at the OpenupEd framework. So here we have a little paragraph here which is related to digital openness. So you can think about this as the intellectual property, the licensing of the MOOC, which is obviously meant to be open. So we have the benchmarks here, number 11 at the institutional level, which is about licensing and openness. And then we have a course level benchmark, which is a similar thing but applied to that particular course to make sure that everything in it is pretty open and available. So then we come right down to the bottom to the feature, which is called digital openness. And then moving on, we have a slightly different example here, which is more related to accessibility and inclusiveness, such as was spoken about by Paco just now. So we have a benchmark to do with the institutional level, which is around dealing with all the ethical and legal aspects of the course, well, all the courses from that institution properly. And then looking in the individual course level, benchmark number 28 is again concerned with accessibility and layout and presentation, which would be suitable for all learners, regardless of their capabilities. And that's summarized in the OpenupEd feature, which is called Openness to Learners. So that was just a little example of how one might apply this in practice. You wouldn't be applying it to a written case study, but you would be applying it to your own judgment of the particular MOOC platform, the institution providing the MOOC, and the course itself. So just summarising this now, we can see that the quality process comes from both the institution, which in the case of that case study was the UK Open University, and the platform provider, which was FutureLearn in that example, but could be any. So it's an overarching approach that brings together the institution, the course that it's offering, and looks at the process of producing that course and running it, as well as the actual course as a product. So we're looking at the whole thing together in this holistic approach, looking at how we approach doing the course production and the course presentation, looking through right from the very beginning, from the development of the course to how it's delivered, and then afterwards to an evaluation so that the thing can be improved in the future and the processes can be improved. So as John said earlier, this is not about quality assurance as such. It's not a checking process that everything was okay. It's a review process so that everything can continue to be improved into the future. And I think that's us. So the first link is to the OpenupEd quality label, so that you can have a look at the resources and the processes there. And then if you'd like to learn any more, then do feel free to contact John or me on our email addresses at the Open University. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen and John. Very nice to have a short overview of this quality label and the quality approach itself. Marcus did have a short question on how you define digital openness, but I think that I replied already accordingly, and Karen already presented a case of digital openness, both from the licensing and the free cost aspect. Alistair said, are there any stats on how many courses have been awarded the label? John, Karen, I think that most of the label itself is from an institutional perspective, so not for each course itself.
It would be, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
I think I was going to throw it back to you, Darko, in case you know what's going on, current state of play.
Yeah, so at this moment, about 17 institutions, of course it could be 15, I need to check it, institutions did get the OpenupEd label. So that's an institutional label where there is a review process with 2 external experts, not to check this quality checklist, etc., but to check if their quality assurance process is according to what OpenupEd is stating and in benchmarks, and checking on different levels. In this review process, at least 2 MOOCs are checked. So not all MOOCs are checked. So instead of checking all MOOCs, it's an institutional label checking the quality processes for enhancement of their MOOC quality. Alistair also asked, do they get a badge to the display? Yes, not to the participants, but the institution will and are using the badge or the label as a part of seen as a quality checked by OpenupEd and having the label.
There's a question there which is about differences in participants' view of a MOOC, which I talked about in slide 1. Any further details on why this is? I think the answer there was probably that maybe one of the students didn't know any better, and another student had a lot of experience of online education. So I think students come with views and preconceptions about what an online course could be like, and then they may be more or less critical about what they see. So in that particular case, that was a very early example of a MOOC, which was very transmissive. You sat back, you watched a video, you looked at a PowerPoint, you answered a question. And so it had a very particular view about what online education would be like. And I think a couple of the students or participants in that had much broader experiences about what online course could be like, with more communication and collaboration and so on. And so I think students coming with very different backgrounds is what's at play there.
Yeah, I can add, well, just to confirm that, really, not in relation to MOOCs, but I've certainly come across that phenomenon in other online learning environments where students have a different perspective on what makes for good learning, whether it's online or face-to-face indeed. And so some students really think it needs to be interactive and engaging, and that the role of the students is to help with the learning and the teaching, while other students would prefer that it's the teacher's role to do the teaching, and they prefer to be taught in somewhat of a more passive way. So those two different perspectives can lead to quite different reactions to a course, depending on what kind of teaching and learning approach it has taken. Not hearing you, Darko.
Sorry, I'm talking without audio. So that is also a nice bridge to the next presentation from ASU, from the European perspective, or student perspectives. There's another last question before we go to that presentation. Is CNET?
I think the answer to that question is probably that e-excellence would be the more suitable approach for e-learning generally, rather than OpenupEd. But they are very similar in that they started from essentially the same set of benchmarks. So they take a very similar approach and cover very similar ground.
Yeah. But remember that both e-excellence and OpenupEd label are at an institutional level or at a program level, curriculum level. Well, it's not by definition a MOOC label itself. It's more a label that the institutional processes on quality is in place. Okay, thank you, John and Karen, for this presentation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Next presentation is from the student perspective, by the European Students' Union. Kohar, you can activate your microphone and your video. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Yes. Thank you, Darko. Hi everyone. Thanks for this opportunity. And as Darko mentioned, quite on point, this last discussion was quite a good bridge to go to already the students' perspective on the MOOC quality. And before going into the details of the presentation, I would like to ask everyone to go into this link, www.menti.com. We have a short one-question quiz there. So please, when you get there, use the code 137150. And you get a question. As you can see, it asks about what are the most common ways for students to contribute to the quality assurance of the MOOCs. So what have you seen exercised as the most common way for students to contribute to the quality of MOOCs? Is that you should choose just one option, which is a quiz or survey after completing the MOOC. It can be that students are involved in the designing phase of the MOOC. It can be the feedback of those ones who drop off from the course, if you have seen ever this in practice for assuring the quality of the MOOCs. Also, another option could be if you have seen any discussions between peers, like between students who are taking the MOOC, and discussions with different stakeholders, meaning, for example, with those who have developed the course and with those who are attending the course. So please do this during the presentation, because in one of the slides of my presentation, we will try to analyze the results of this question and see what we get there.
One question in the chat is about, do you ask about the most common way or the best way?
Exactly, the most common way, not the best way, but the most common way that you have seen practiced. So it's not about what you think to be the best one, but the one that you have heard or you have seen to be most exercised and in the practice. Okay. Yeah, I see another comment. You are free not to answer to it. I will not get anybody's, like, we will not see who is responding on which option. We will just get a general picture out of this question, and the point is to see which option is the most common one and known one by the people. No prize for getting it right, definitely. Yes, so at the European Students' Union, we really value this opportunity of going into massive open online education, because, of course, it gives us and gives everyone better opportunities to respond to the learners' needs. And for that, it is always important to consider what are the purposes that we are using the massive open online education and what should not be the purposes for using this. So if we go for the purposes at first, we would see that we think that the purpose of MOOC should be to better respond to the needs of the learners, to open access for wider groups, of course, to enhance innovative learning and new ways of learning, to practice them in higher education, and to, of course, ensure diversity of learning methods. So saying this, we would also reflect to the point which was discussed during the last presentation, because when we were speaking about the students who were given a positive feedback to the course and students who have given a negative feedback, this might also be because of the fact that not all learners and not all students have the same approach to the learning and are used to the same methods of the learning. So that's why using the MOOC not separate from the traditional learning, but as an alternative to the traditional learning, is something we appreciate very much at the European Students' Union. And what we think that should not be considered as a purpose of MOOC is to literally replace the availability of traditional learning. So what this means that, of course, providing as an alternative the MOOC is the best thing to do, but it should not lead to the fact that we eliminate traditional learning and we provide only open online courses, because as we will experience with students, in some of the cases this might not be the best method for them to learn and to study. And the second thing which should not be considered as a purpose of MOOC is the cost cutting. Like this might surprise sometimes. Why would we say this, that MOOC should not be used for the purpose of cost cutting? This means that we should not use the MOOC as a tool to simply cut the costs. Of course, using the MOOC indirectly affects the costs. It makes them less, but this should not be the primary purpose for using the MOOCs, and that's what we speak here about. If we go to the, bearing in mind all these purposes and trying to accomplish these purposes and how to avoid the ones which should not be accomplished, here we already speak about what the quality assurance should do to maintain that that this happens, because in most of the cases we would see that rules for MOOCs, for quality assurance of the MOOCs, are rather more lax rather than those can be for the traditional learning. And we see the reasons for this mainly, firstly, because the MOOCs are usually seen as supplementary part to the traditional learning and not the main, and that's why they do not get sometimes enough of attention. The second reason is that MOOCs are relatively very new form of studies compared to the traditional contact study, and this novelty sometimes creates confusion regarding how to approach the quality aspect of MOOCs. And as we know, several very well-known MOOC platforms are private business enterprises, and this separates them from the academic world, and sometimes they do not see the quality assurance procedures as needed, and as they do not see their role in the quality assurance procedures. So yes, these are the main reasons that result in being for us to see QA to be more lax than for traditional learning. And after here, building up on this, we are trying to look into what's the student experience while we talk about the quality assurance, and how can we use the student experience to try to tackle at least some of the quality assurance issues of MOOCs. And here I would like to suggest to see the results of your voting. Please give me a second to try and share my screen with you. Okay, you should see my screen now. And as you can see, we have 18 people voting as the most common way for students to contribute to the QA, seeing the quizzes and surveys only after completion of the MOOCs. Yes, and exactly this is the real picture. So there will be very few cases when students will contribute to the QA in another way rather than just giving the mere simple feedback after they complete the course. So now I will stop sharing my screen, but I will go on with talking about the fact that these are the cases when we just consider students as a homogeneous group of respondents who simply provide their feedback at the end of the course, but do not contribute to the development and improvement of the quality. And this approach is of course seen in the traditional learning as well, but in the case of massive open online courses, this approach is even more harmful, because most often those students who drop off from the half of the course have the most valuable feedback, because dropping off from the course is also the feedback to the quality of that course, which means that we should try to look into further ways on how to use the student's perspective for the quality assurance of the MOOCs. And that's why we at ASU, we were thinking for phases, and of course also doing some desk research, and these are the phases that we think that the student engagement into the quality of MOOCs should also be valued. Starting from the instructional design of the MOOCs, where we will consider students to not be mere participants of the like those who will just like take the MOOC, but also those who are experts in the learning and who can contribute during the instructional design of the MOOC. Then we should always use student expertise to test the MOOCs, and then we're going to the distribution of the MOOCs among learners. And then we go to the completion of the MOOC by learner. And at this fourth phase, we try to, it's important to try to see both the experience of those who have completed the course till the end and those who did not manage to get to the end and dropped off from the half of the course. So yeah, basically these are the main points for considering student perspective. And the last thing that I would like to mention is that we should always bear in mind and look for how we try to assure student engagement to be promoted enough for achieving the quality of the MOOCs. Because if for the traditional learning we have very clear policy documents which would advocate and support student engagement, then for the open online educational resources and MOOCs particularly, unfortunately we do not have very direct policy guiding. Therefore, this is something for ESU very important to advocate for and ask promotion for. Yes, and here are our contact details, and I'll be looking for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kohar. There was one question from Marcus who a little bit replied on find the MOOC learner. As there are many dropouts, that's also related to the completion rate. So, what's your experience with your approach? So that's the main question for Marcus, I think. You presented a 4 points approach. What's your experience?
Yes, it is mentioned quite genuinely that it's often very hard to define the MOOC learner, but it also depends on whether we use the MOOC as something which is integrated into the formal curricula, or we use the MOOC something which is being attained voluntarily by a student, or by not a student, by an adult who is into the lifelong learning and who is a learner. But there should be some, like when you enroll in a course, you provide some details of you, right? So maybe we should try to look into how these details that we get from a learner can help us to study and examine in more details the learner's experience, and then use it for the quality assurance of the MOOC. There is a question, what are your experiences? Questions. I think I'm losing the track of the questions. I see the question, how to ensure that students who drop off the course are willing to fill in the survey. Well, we cannot force them, of course. Thank you for the question, Victoria. This is something that we were thinking a lot. You can, of course, not force them to do that, but when you enroll in an online course and you leave it from the HUF, you often get reminder that you are enrolled in this course and you are not finishing it. But you usually would not get a question on why you are not continuing it. And most of the students look into the email that they get from this course, and you will get at least a small percentage of them who would just provide a short feedback if you ask for it. So there is no enforcement here, but at least an attempt would be still helpful. Yeah, I see there is a comment. Sorry?
There's just one question. You can also answer one question. Yeah.
Okay. A comment that students in traditional learning, a traditional university, are not the main target. Yes, they are not the main target, but still they are in the general public group. And yeah, honestly, I do not say the main point here. Maybe we can chat later on with Alastair if you would like. So yeah. Am I able to take another question, or?
We are a little bit behind schedule now, so thank you, Kohar. So
okay.
I think that the comment Marcus made on ensuring quality, that we also ask pre-course, so before the MOOC, that's okay. I think that some of them are already doing that. It was not in your survey, only the survey afterwards, after the MOOC completion, but there are also many MOOC providers who also have a pre-course questionnaire. So in that sense, you can also taking account their motivation and intention as well. So thank you, Kohar, for this presentation. Very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you as well. Thank you.
Next, we have two different presentations from European MOOC platforms, and I'm very glad that they are willing to give their views on quality and quality assurance on MOOCs. The first one will be from FutureLearn, and I will give the floor to Rebecca. Rebecca, you can activate your microphone, and yes, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Darko. It's been really, really interesting so far hearing your various different perspectives, especially hearing the student one. So thanks everyone so far. It's been really great. So my name is Rebecca. I don't know if my presentation's quite up yet. Do I need to click on that? Oh, there we are. So yes, Rebecca, I'm a partnership manager at MOOC platform FutureLearn, which basically means I work with a number of our partners in the kind of delivery and transformation onto our platform of their course materials. So it's probably just best I give you a very brief minute on who FutureLearn are, for the benefit of you guys who might not be so familiar with us. We are 5 years old, just over. Very quickly, we are up to 8.25 million learners on our platform, which has been a huge, exciting growth for us, actually. We are founded and 100% owned by the Open University, which is obviously a huge benefit to us, as they've got 50 years of immense experience in online learning in the field. So that's a bit more about who we are. We work with 150 plus partners, and these partners are very, very global, and they range from top universities to specialist organisations. So there's a lot of variety and diversity about our partners, which is something we do love about working with this platform. So that's us briefly in a very, very quick nutshell. Coming on to our QA, we quality assure every single course against a fairly stringent 69-point course criteria. So I wanted to kind of fill in a little bit of background colour on why we do that. I've just told you we work with some of the top universities globally. Who do we think we are? A startup of 5 years to kind of advise on quality assurance. It's obviously such long-standing institutions. What can we add? It's nothing subject specific, of course, as we're very broad range of subjects on the platform to quality assure all of our partners' courses in terms of their education content. I'd have to be an expert in everything from supercomputing to jazz piano, which is obviously highly unrealistic. So what do we think we add? Is a second layer of QA. We expect our partners to do a first internal layer, of course, to their own kind of quality assurance standards. And I think what we add is a second layer of digital transformation. And there's 3 ways I think that our process adds and assists partners with that digital transformation from their face-to-face learning to learning online on our platform. We QA so our partners can reach new audiences, our audiences who are all on the FutureLearn platform. We QA in terms of our pedagogy, social learning, and then also in terms of our platform. That's another key area we're looking to assure the quality of, as it's quite a unique platform and got some kind of technological quirks and differences that partners might not be familiar with. So there's a big piece of work around that we do on every course as well. I'm just going to dive a little bit into each of these individually, just so you get a bit of a clearer picture about our purposes behind our QA. So firstly, our audience, which is obviously a huge consideration, like every good startup and business, ensuring that we user focused. So who are this audience of 8.25 million people? They are broad, is the answer. They are from 230 plus countries, which is a very exciting thing in terms of our reach. That's really exciting. They're also 60% female, which is something quite unusual for a MOOC platform. And they are also largely of the kind of main working age. So that's to say just over 50% of our learners are in full-time employment, and just under 50% are looking to do courses specifically for CPD. So what can we conclude from that in terms of what kind of quality measures need to be put in place for our courses? Our learners are busy. They do probably quite demanding day jobs. So they're fitting this learning in while they're on the way to work on the train when they come home from work. So they have to be very self-motivated, and our learning has to be kind of quality assured to make sure it fits their lifestyle. Another key aspect that we're quality assuring is our social learning pedagogy, which we have built over the last 5 years around these 3 kind of key pillars. First of all, storytelling and narrative, which we think is absolutely key to helping learners remember, communicate and structure their learning. It's a really, really valuable tool to us, and something we encourage partners to work with in a really ongoing way. Provoking conversation, meaningful conversation, so encouraging asking questions. That's something that we really like to encourage in our online courses, because we think it's really at the core about how learners come together and learn from each other, from the educators, and from all those conversations that they're having. And then also a celebration of visible progress is really important, so a learner has a sense of achievement in a sensible place and is motivated to then continue. There's also work we do around quality assuring courses with our partners specifically for our platform. There's a big piece around accessibility. Obviously, with such a range of learners, accessibility is a huge, huge priority for us at FutureLearn, and that is in as a business as well, and just as an organisation, it's really part of our kind of frameworks internally and externally. So we've got very high accessibility standards for our course, things like accessibility for mobile, subtitles, alt text, all of that stuff does have to be really assured to a high standard, so learners with any kind of lack of access aren't missing out on any element of the education at all. We're also looking at quality assurance on the platform from the perspective of learner engagement. I've just talked about our learners being busy, so they might begin doing a course when they get home. We're competing with everything that's kind of vying for their attention that evening, whether that's, you know, the pub, what's on TV, social media. We know that we can't be complacent, and we really do have to put a lot of emphasis around the engagement of our courses. So the kind of larger meat of what I wanted to get across to you today is, how do we QA? What's our process internally? And the answer to that is, it is embedded. So this is what I would call the ideal world, this kind of outline of process here and timeline of when we onboard a partner, they deliver their first course and everything in between. It doesn't happen like that every time. Of course it doesn't. There's sort of, each partner has different needs and different kind of targets and for the partnership, and that's okay. We are flexible within this. But what I'm trying to express is that our QA process is embedded from onboarding. That is the very first point we start talking about our learners. That's the first point we start talking about our audiences and accessibility and how things work technically on the platform. And from there, our ideal is being very, very iterative with our partners, so we can be quite agile. So we'll feed back from a quality assurance perspective on course proposals, then on high-level outlines, and then throughout the course build phase as well. The idea being, then when we get to final course submission and a big piece of quality assurance work, there's no massive surprises in there that we're thinking, oh my goodness, this could potentially be a problem with accessibility, but they've done a lot of work on it already. So the idea with being iterative and agile is that we don't ever approach any kind of huge stumbling blocks like that in the kind of short window lead up to a course. So what do we QA with? What's the kind of backbone of all this? The actual quality assurance itself, and that's our course criteria. It is something the content team at FutureLearn are really proud of. because it's very robust, we feel, and very open and transparent. It's available for every partner to see and kind of look at from the very first moment that they become a partner. It's made up of 69 quality assurance points. So part of my my job as a partnership manager is to look at every course that goes onto the platform and green, amber, or red light every single point of that assurance checkpoints. If it gets to the point where a course gets too many reds, then we have kind of postponed before until they can be fixed, until it satisfies the sort of quality standards. And that's something that partners are contractually obliged to adhere to. So it's something we are quite stringent about, and I think rightly so here at FutureLearn. The course criteria itself is broken down into 3 main sections: pedagogy, technical, and business. I talked a lot about audience. That's kind of a thread that feeds through all of the process here. So I'll go into a little bit more about what we're looking for in quality assurance in those 3 sections. Firstly, pedagogy. Just as examples of checkpoints on here, we'll look at learning outcomes. We'll consider, are they clear? Are they adhered to? Are they in a kind of meaningful way? Are they adhered to in a way where a student learner will obviously feel like they've achieved something? The first activity is a really big one for us as well, because it's obviously such a common drop-off point with online learning. If you lose a learner, then that's, it doesn't give you any kind of opportunity to get back their engagement throughout the rest of the course. Educator visibility is another thing that we focus a great deal on. We find learners get a lot out of educators being visible within the social learning, within the comments, and having their input there to provoke conversation, ask questions. And then we have a number of points as well around step variety. I'll just give you an example about a common pitfall that people tend to fall into, and that's more of a series of talking head videos, which it just seems to be quite a common mistake that gets made in online courses. So we're kind of looking for more variety than that, because we know that that's simply not engaging. So we're looking for more variety and balance of assessments as well. Then coming on to the technical side, again, as I explained a bit about earlier, there's a big piece around accessibility, images having appropriate alt text, having accurate subtitles, and quite often partners put in steps where external tools are used. For example, they might go to another website which will produce a word cloud. And every kind of external tool that's reviewed as well is reviewed by a product team under the same standards. So we make sure we've got that consistency of accessibility there. Security as well is obviously a big consideration. We do a number of checks around data protection because that's obviously a very big problem if there's a problem in that sense. Durations as well. There's obviously a lot of work being done around optimum video duration. If it's too long, that's obviously a problem for learner engagement, and the same with article length. We also look at kind of tone and clarity in our kind of course criteria, and that's more a language point in some cases, I think. So we're looking out for things like terminology being introduced that's very specific to the subject that hasn't come up in the course before, because we tend to find that's something that can very quickly alienate learners if they feel like it's being pitched at a level that they haven't quite got to understanding yet. So there's some points around tone and clarity that we have to consider as well. There's also some business considerations from both the partner and FutureLearn perspective. We have a number of products which are kind of available to partners within the courses. For example, a tool we call lead generation, and that is basically a sort of student recruitment tool for universities to use, and it's making sure that that's properly implemented in the optimum way to generate the most leads for them. And it's also kind of appropriate use of our branding, their branding. So there's that marketing piece around it as well. We've got a really big marketing team here who do a lot of work around that. So that was a very, very quick tour through our FutureLearn QA process. So yeah, it was very quick, obviously, 10 minutes. But yeah, thank you for listening.
Okay. Thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah.
We're a little bit behind schedule, so I will give the floor for only 2 questions.
Okay.
And one of them is the optimum video duration in your criteria list.
Yeah. It's hard to say very exactly. I think around 2 minutes. And that tends to be where we see the most learner engagement. After 2 minutes, there does tend to be a considerable drop. I could probably get you an accurate figure from our stats and things, but generally our recommendation wholly to partners is around 2 minutes.
Okay. There was a first question by Marcus about the rejection rate. So if partner proposes too many red lights, how many are rejected?
How many courses?
Yeah.
Very few are actually rejected to the point that they don't ever come on the platform. It doesn't tend to be a problem. It's the idea with our system being that we kind of manage these sort of partner expectations before it becomes to the point that it's completely inappropriate for the platform. But we're built to provide a lot of support for the partners. So if they're not, particularly if it's their first experience of online learning, for example, we're kind of designed to support that. So it's very, very, very rare that a course doesn't end up eventually coming on the platform.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you so much.
The next presentation is from Catherine. Catherine is CEO from FUN in France. Quality assurance procedures at the FUN platform. Catherine, the floor is yours.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Darko, can you just tell me if you hear me well? Okay, perfect. Okay, well, thank you very much for the invitation. I just want to, I have very few slides. First of all, I would like to tell you about a little bit about FUN so you understand where we stand in terms of quality insurance. FUN is born in 2013. It's an initiative from the French Ministry of Higher Education, and you have to understand that this is a collective initiative. So when we decided to launch a MOOC platform, we had partners, we had university, we had schools who wanted to have a shared MOOC platform. So we started when almost no one really knew what a MOOC was or what a MOOC was supposed to be. Just a few characteristics of FUN. So the platform uses an open source solution. It's an OpenupEd platform. The data are hosted in France, and we have a very strong policy about data privacy, both the learners' data and the learning data of the learners. But we also have a rule that says that anonymized data can be provided to a research lab who want to work with those data, because we all know that this is very important. And from the very beginning, we decided collectively with our partners to have a very strong editorial policy. So we have an editorial committee. This editorial committee is in charge of giving a go for universities and partners who want to join. So by saying that, I want you to understand that FUN is a platform that serves institutions, and those institutions are teaching institutions or public or private institutions, but whose main work is to provide courses or to provide knowledge for the learners. So they are in charge of part of the quality assurance in the whole process. And then from the very beginning, we decided to create a quality charter, so everyone in our environment knew what we were expecting to be a good MOOC. Just to let you know, today we are a public organization with almost 200 French universities and schools who are partners, either by themselves or by their local organization. And we have, of course, public and private partners, and we have a private branch to develop continuous education since January this year. So as I said, in 2013, when we started to launch the MOOC platform, we really had to make sure that we shared together what we thought a MOOC should be. I'm not saying that all the MOOCs are great, but at least we do have rules that says what a MOOC is or what it should be. And we did that even before the platform was launched. In the summer 2013, we had a group of experts, of French experts, French teachers, experts in instructional design who worked with us. So we wrote down a quality charter that each university, each school, each partner who is providing a course on the platform has to follow. So there are three main principles in this quality charter. The first one is that you have to have a good team to create your course. Sorry, maybe I go back to one point. As you probably have understood, but I was not clear on that topic, we do not create courses. The university creates their courses. The university are responsible for the contents they create and the choices in terms of material they want to put together in the book. But anyway, when we started, it wasn't clear for some institution that you do not create a MOOC the way you used to create some sort of other course, because a MOOC has a specific audience, it goes on the internet, it must use good ingredients the way Rebecca told before. So you have to have a collaborative team and you have to work to create a MOOC as you would work as a project. So you have to have milestones, documents, and that's what we as the team at France Université Numérique. We have been creating a lot of training sessions. We are still creating training sessions for our new partners. We share documents for them to follow the different milestones to create a course. And that's basically a very important step for us. The second issue is what the university has to put in a MOOC. So I'm not going to go back to what Rebecca explained. They have to have different type of documents. Videos should be of good quality. They should be quite short, though we do not go to 2 minutes video. We agree with our partners that when you have to explain a quite tricky concept in physics or whatever, then you probably need a little bit than 2 minutes video. But definitely we all know from research studies that when the video is longer than 8 or 9 minutes, then you have really lost all the audience, even those who are willing to follow what you are saying. So the material, the document, the text, this has to be created up properly and to fit with the audience. We all know a MOOC has very wide audience. So this is a very important point for us. And the third very important topic is about the collaborative activities you have on a MOOC. A MOOC is really a course, and a course is a community, a learning community meeting together. The teachers with the learners among themselves. So this community has to live on the MOOC, and to live on the MOOC, they have to have forum activities, peer evaluation, various activities that will really create this community and make sure that the learners have a very good learning experience. So that's basically the different ingredients that we have, and then there are a couple of checklists that we provide them when they create the MOOC. As for us, for our team, we are not going to go inside the course to check whether they did exactly what they were supposed to do, because universities are responsible. A MOOC on the FUN platform is under the umbrella of a university. So they all know that it's their responsibility to create an attractive course. We do check the teasers, we do check the syllabus, but we don't go deep into the MOOCs because we don't have first of all, we don't have the team to do that, and it's the responsibilities of our members and partners to really check on that. So that was my last slide, but before stopping my presentation, I also want to tell you that, of course, the quality of the MOOC is one point, the accessibility is another point. And I was very interested in the first presentation. We are not very, very far on the FUN platform at the moment, but we are working with some of our partners, and we are working with a startup in France who is really an expert in the accessibility of contents. And we have currently a project where we start to really work on what an accessible MOOC is, or what a MOOC must be to be accessible to everyone. And we have the plan in a year from now to have a guide on accessibility on MOOCs. And of course, we start to add in our checklist for the quality of MOOCs this issue of accessibility, and we start to, put in our community what a MOOC should have to be accessible. Okay, I guess I'm done for my presentation. Thank you for listening, and I am open to question. I agree with Alistair. MOOCs are fun.
Thank you, Katrien. Regarding your last remark, accessibility is in your case not only technical accessibility, but also pedagogical accessibility and accessibility for very different targets.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The accessibility is two sides. Okay, how is the platform accessible, but how are the contents accessible? What is an accessible video? What do you do for a deaf learner? What do you do for learners who have videos but cannot see them? How do you provide contents that will be easily accessible for people who are not who have problem with their hands or things like that? So we work with a research team that uses oculometry to check what you do when you are looking at a screen and see whether what works and what doesn't work in terms of the way you organize the course.
Yes, and I know there are initiatives also to make online courses or MOOCs more accessible for migrants and refugees as well.
Absolutely, so, absolutely.
And so it's not only the disabled people, but also people with a language shortage.
Yes, you are absolutely right. As our partner says, when accessibility is important for some specific needs people, it's good for everyone. And of course, it's good for, and in our case, it's very important for all those learners who follow our MOOCs without being French native speakers. And as you probably know, we have a lot of Francophone people on the platform, but they are not native. It's very important for them also to access to the subtitle of the videos, the transcripts of the video, and to work really for those audiences as well. But I do absolutely agree with you, Darko. The issue is really for everyone to learn better.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Katrien. Very nice. I don't see any additional questions in the chat for the moment. Perhaps we have some questions at the end of the webinar itself. So, there's one question from Katrien.
Do French universities integrate online learning in their internal curriculum? Well, a lot of French universities have online curricula already. online bachelor or online master's. So they obviously have their own internal QA procedures, and as you probably know, we do have a very strong national organization that checks and that how do you say accredite in
Accreditation of
accreditation. So it's part of the accreditation process that each university has to go through every 5 years.
Yeah. The EDTU just published before the summer holidays a CPL study, so that's on comparing different institutions and national policies on online learning. So if you Google the CPL report EDTU, you will find the different procedures on integrating online learning in curricula, etc., but also in open education and continuous education. So thank you, Katrien.
Thank you.
I will have the final presentation, and as we are a little bit behind schedule, I will make it very short. The presentations itself will be available, like the recording itself, and shared with you as you are registered for this webinar. I will just highlight, and I think we'll integrate a lot of perspectives just presented on the quality dimension related to MOOCs. Notice that we are part of the more webinars coming up on the next 2 days. And just to focus on a project where we have not one institution who's providing a MOOC or just one MOOC. In this case, I'm participating in the BizMOOC project. It's a knowledge analysis project. You can see the partnership here. And in this project, we promise to deliver 3 different kinds of MOOCs. Notice that the project itself is related to the world of business. So it's about enabling the use of MOOCs and the potential of MOOCs by employees and employers and unemployed people itself. So not by definition the regular students, but more the lifelong learner, but also the use of MOOCs by companies itself. And what you now see in these presentations, and I think that Katrien from FUN highlights this as well, is there's a little bit overlapping in perhaps some tension between how to do quality checking and quality assurance and quality enhancement within MOOCs. So you can check every MOOC on very different quality standards, and some quality dimensions are highlighted here, like accessibility, but also the technical platform, the support, the quality of the content, the videos, etc. On the other hand, the OpenupEd label and also the quality chart of FUN is also focusing on the responsibility of the institution and the quality processes in place at an institutional level. But the main question I want to address is how to do this in cross-sectoral and cross-institutional teams. So then you don't have a team, one university responsible in developing a MOOC. Moreover, it's also not only universities working together, but also companies involved in the team. So therefore, we started to develop a quality assurance model, a framework within this project. You need to highlight that the characteristics is that the development MOOC teams are very diverse in their knowledge about MOOCs and also about the pedagogical and technical aspects. So there is a lack of knowledge. The platforms are very differently, so there's not one platform like in FutureLearn or FUN. We want to apply different type of MOOC, so self-paced MOOCs, more the C or X MOOCs, most video-based or community-based. And we try to develop MOOCs that are only reusing existing material, so OER and existing video and quizzes, and MOOCs that are developing all the materials, so a wide range of characteristics here. So how to do the quality assurance in this kind of cross-sectoral and cross-institutional teams? And we, in this project, invest a lot in the pre-production phase. So invest in the knowledge of the teams on the MOOC and MOOC developments. And those people involved in the MOOC development teams need to produce 15, 14 state-of-the-art papers that are available in this link. But also, like the presentation from ASU, from the student perspectives, they need to be aware about the characteristics of the different target groups. So therefore, we applied 55 or 56 interviews with companies not yet involved in, or not that involved in MOOCs, 55 interviews with higher education institutions not involved in MOOCs. And we did have an online survey, even before the production phase itself, is over 1,100 citizens all over Europe, and mainly in Eastern Europe. Those reports are available on the BizMOOC site as well. So, but that's part of the quality process where you train the people in the process, on the pedagogical process on MOOCs and what's happening on MOOCs, but also the characteristics of the different target groups they need to comply when developing MOOCs. The next phase in the project was that I, as a work package leader on quality assurance and evaluation, made an initial proposal on quality assurance. And that proposal included criteria for checking the quality of the MOOCs, including also the process of checking the quality. And that was reviewed by the work package leader, led to an improved proposal. That improved proposal was reviewed by each MOOC production team before starting with the production, and then it was reviewed by the final with the coordinator. So also the quality assurance process was tailored to the needs of the teams and checked, and the criteria were well known beforehand. Now, the quality assurance and evaluation in the 6 steps we did apply in the project was that we did review the MOOC design. So not the implementation, but the design itself. And the design was done by the other teams. So we have 3 different teams. So 2 teams were checking the design of the other team, but also 2 external evaluators. In addition, before the production of the MOOCs, we had, when the design was almost implemented in the platform, we had external feedback by experts on the 6 open questions. And the student or the learner perspectives was addressed before the launch of the MOOC by a survey amongst registered MOOC participants. So before starting, and that has, in this case, more than 600 responses. Then a lot of data already came from the analytics of the core statistics, but also of the fora and different communities within the MOOC. And afterwards, based on quality assurance process, we had again feedback by external experts, mostly in focus groups, and we have at the end a survey amongst MOOC participants that completed the MOOC. So again, 6 steps of part of the quality assurance. Just to highlight a little bit on, for example, the MOOC design. The MOOC design had 5 different dimensions. There's a lot of criteria to check the quality of the design itself. Again, related to accessibility, but also to content and activities. And here you see, and it's available on the website very shortly from now, the checklist we used, again, this partly achieved or fully achieved, etc. Related to the external experts, the dimensions are listed here on pre-course levels, and on the post-course dimensions is the focus group. And the dimensions that are included in the survey, pre-survey, is also the reasons and motivation. So that's very important also to know the motivation of the students beforehand, and the learners. And we had a survey after the MOOC was completed according to these dimensions. So that was very shortly how we tackled this process in a more cross-sectoral and cross-institutional MOOC teams, addressing both the knowledge beforehand of the MOOC team itself, the knowledge about the target group and what the target group needs are, addressing both the design of the MOOC itself, checking the quality before the launch by experts and students, and afterwards again feedback from experts and students after MOOC completion. So that was very shortly about the quality assurance process in the BizMOOC project as a case study, and then we are now producing a total evaluation report, and it will be available in 2 months from now. So on the BizMOOC site, the whole checklist, the whole procedure will be elaborated in a separate report. So that was from my side this presentation on quality on MOOCs. I see that Marcus has a question about the pre and post comparisons. Yes, it should be done because we did have some questions about intention and motivation. And then you could cross-check that with the post-survey comparison. But then the number of students who did conduct or comply the pre-course did not do that post-course. So not that many. So there were only a few where we can have the cross-check pre and post comparison. So that is a little bit of a design flaw we need to tackle in a next phase or another project. Alistair has a question about how this will differ from a regular online for credit course. I think it differs not really, because it's partly a team, so you could apply the same procedures as developed and applied in this project to also every MOOC course team, both institutional, cross-institutional, etc. The only part where we say for credit course is that there's always a check related to the credit. So is it only a credit for participation, or is it a credit like an ECTS credit as part of a curricula? And then there needs to be an additional check by the faculty or by the curricula institution on that. But I think that the procedure now can be applied to those courses as well, and does not have to differ. Sean made if the pre-course review was early enough to make changes before delivery. Very good question, Sean. The OU UK was part of one of the teams, and the feedback both by the external reviewers and on the pre-course review was not enough to implement all the changes and recommendations. So what they did is some low-hanging fruits. They just try to incorporate as many as possible within the 2 or 3 weeks left, and then decided to make a relaunch 5 or 6 months after. So they developed a self-paced MOOC based and available in OpenLearn Create, and all the comments and reviews they could not implement, they try to incorporate that in an additional launch 5 months later. So there's always a tension between how much feedback you can elaborate and incorporate in the few weeks or months that is between the review and the formal launch. So indeed. Any questions left from you as a participant? You can also always contact one of the presenters or me if you have very specific questions. Note that the presentations, but also the recording, will be available on the OpenupEd website, but also with a link on the Empower. I see that someone are still typing or not. Otherwise, I'd like to thank all the participants, but also the presenters for this presentation and webinar. So it was very nice to have a broad overview from very different perspectives on the quality of MOOCs. note that we are from EDTU working on a trend report on MOOCs, focusing on quality. So most of the presentations presented today will have a little bit more elaboration in a separate OpenupEd trend report published soon. So thank you again, and I will close the meeting in 1 minute.